Good morning. Today is Wednesday, April 19th, and this is Devotions from St. Paul Evangelical Lutheran Church in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I'm going to take a passage today from Paul's letter to the Corinthians. It's called the first letter to the Corinthians. Paul had visited the Corinthians earlier in time, and now he's writing back to them. When he first visited, he was doing the work of converting, getting the people to understand that Jesus Christ was Lord and Messiah. And now he's writing back to them to talk about the wisdom of God. And so that's what this passage is about. It's from the second chapter of the book of 1 Corinthians. Yet among the mature, we do speak wisdom, though it is not the wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age who are doomed to perish. But we speak of God's wisdom, secret and hidden, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor human heart conceived, what God has prepared for those who love him. These things God revealed to us through the Spirit. For the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. For what human being knows what is truly human, except the human spirit that is within? So also, no one comprehends what is truly God, except the Spirit of God. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from God, so that we may understand the gifts bestowed on us by God. And we speak of these things in words not taught by human wisdom, but taught by the Spirit, interpreting spiritual things to those who are spiritual. I think Paul's words here are just a little bit complicated, but basically what he is saying is God doesn't think like us. He doesn't understand like us. And we should understand that we don't understand like him either. Our wisdom is not his wisdom. So let's take this in part. The wisdom of the rulers of the time when Jesus was on this earth saw fit to crucify him. They did not understand God's plan. They did not understand God. 2,000 years later, the wisdom of this age, if we put our faith only in this age, is no better. We still depend upon the wisdom of God. And so Paul tries to explain that to us. God's wisdom was present in the world long before Jesus walked. And Paul says that that was for our glory. Now, part of that is creation. You look around and you see the way that things work well when they're on their own, and it really does take human beings to screw those things up pretty good. But God has the power to make all that work. So what do we find out about that? Well, Paul uses the example, no one knows what is truly human except the human spirit. Now, I don't know how much you've thought about it. You sit down and you get silent, quiet, and just think about, what is my purpose here on this earth? And at least for me, before I get too far along on that thought, it comes to me, it isn't to learn something. It isn't to do something. It's got to be connected to God because nothing else lasts. We see generation after generation. You read in the paper every day, there's obituaries. We're going to pass too. But God is still here and will still be here. And so the human spirit, for me, says I need to connect to that. That's where eternity is. Now, Paul also says, no one can know what is truly God except the Spirit of God, which would mean on our own, we can't know God. But then he says, God gives us that Spirit when we believe. And so through the Spirit that God gives us, then we have the opportunity to know and to understand God. It says in Proverbs that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And I think Paul is saying basically the same thing. We are not going to know God until we get that Spirit. We're not going to get that Spirit until we know Jesus and believe in Him as Lord and Messiah. It's interesting that Paul says that you have to be mature to get to this point. And yet he has so many examples of how human wisdom doesn't measure up to that. So how do we define this maturity? And I think that comes back to the same thing. This is maturity in our faith. We have to work on our faith. It's good to believe that Jesus is Lord and Messiah, but I don't know that it's enough to be mature in that faith and to really understand the Spirit of God. Paul says one more thing. It's a verse I did not read, so I am going to read it now. But it's our key to doing all this understanding. So this is verse 16 in the second chapter. For who has known the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. That's our roadmap. That's our textbook. The things that Jesus taught us while he was here are the same things that Paul is trying to explain to us now. And they are the things that are going to tell us first about Jesus, and then through Jesus tell us about God. And that's when we will have the beginning of wisdom. I hope you ponder these things that are in the second chapter of this book, 1 Corinthians. I find them difficult. It's hard to explain. It's hard to understand. But it seems to me that the mature faith that Paul is calling for us to have rests on a firm belief in Jesus as Lord and Savior, and then further work on our part to understand everything that he came to teach us. And that will be the beginning of wisdom for us. I hope this is a beginning for you. I hope you'll read these passages in Corinthians and think about them in your own life. Thank you.